My name is Michael Carter. I am 35 years old, and I live in Los Angeles, California. On March 14th, 2023, I died for 5 minutes, and what I saw in that near-death experience still shakes me to this day. For 5 minutes, everything I thought I knew about life, success, and control was stripped away. For 5 minutes, I crossed a line I never thought I would see until old age. For 5 minutes, I touched eternity. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but I know it was more than that. Because in those 5 minutes, I saw what money could never buy. I felt what pride had always robbed me of. I discovered the one thing my restless heart had been searching for all along: peace. Yet, before that night, peace was the last word I would use to describe my life. I had the perfect image, the tailored suits, the downtown office with the skyline view, the reputation of a man climbing higher every year. People around me saw success, but I saw sleepless nights. I saw strained relationships. I saw a man who could close million-dollar deals, but could not sit still long enough to listen to his own daughter tell him about her day. I prayed when people expected me to. I smiled when the cameras were on me, but inside, my soul was restless, empty, fragile. It is strange how you can fool the world while slowly dying on the inside. How you can convince yourself you are fine until the mask begins to crack. Looking back, I realized the signs were always there. The chest tightness I ignored, the way I drowned stress in endless work, the guilt I buried under late nights and glowing computer screens. But that night, the night my heart gave way, none of that mattered. No title, no salary, no reputation. All that mattered was what I carried inside, and the truth was brutal. I carried anger I never released. I carried guilt I never confessed. I carried wounds I never healed. It weighed me down, and when the line between life and death appeared, that weight nearly dragged me into darkness. Before that day, before the moment, my body collapsed and my world went silent. My life seemed perfect. My life was a carefully constructed illusion, a house built on ambition, but with cracks in the foundation I refused to acknowledge. I woke up every morning at 5 a.m. The routine never changed. I would hit the gym for an hour, then drive through the quiet streets of Los Angeles, thinking about the day ahead. The city was still asleep, and it always felt like the calm before the storm. I liked it that way. Control, order, a sense of purpose. But it wasn't just the work that defined me. I was married to Sarah, a woman I loved but barely noticed. I had a daughter, Emma, who was growing up so quickly I couldn't keep up. My family was the background to my life, the backdrop that stayed out of focus while I chased the next big deal, the next promotion, the next high. Sarah had stopped asking me to dinner. Weeks would go by before I realized I hadn't seen Emma's latest drawing. When I did see them, it was like I was in a fog there, but not really there. My mind was always somewhere else, always on the next task, the next deadline. Sarah used to look at me with love in her eyes. Now I only saw exhaustion in her gaze, a quiet sadness that lingered between us. It wasn't her fault. She had tried, but I had shut her out. She'd stopped talking to me about her day, stopped asking about mine. There was nothing to talk about. I was just too busy. But it wasn't just Sarah or Emma. There were people at work too, colleagues I had once considered friends. We shared jokes, made deals, but underneath it all, I knew I was walking alone. There was one person though, who had tried to reach out. Ben, my best friend from college. He had been like a brother to me, but somewhere along the way, I pushed him away. He'd started his own business, one that was thriving. I resented him for it. It was like he had everything I wanted, everything I could never quite reach. So I pulled away. I never told him why, never told him how his success made me feel like I was drowning. It wasn't his fault, but that didn't matter then. I refused to face it. I told myself I was too busy, too focused on my own life to deal with his. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what had happened to my joy. I had everything the world said I should want, and yet I felt like I was carrying a weight I couldn't drop. The restlessness grew worse. My chest felt tighter every day, like I was suffocating but didn't know how to breathe. But that night, the night I died, it all came to a crashing halt. It wasn't just a heart attack, it was a wake-up call. The truth was I had been running from myself for years, from the shame I carried, from the people I hurt, and from the choices I'd made that left scars on my soul. It was easier to run, easier to distract myself with work, success, and appearances, than to face what was really wrong. But the cracks were starting to show. It wasn't just the guilt I felt for neglecting Sarah and Emma, though that weighed heavily on me. There was something deeper. When I was a child, my father left. He didn't leave a note or a goodbye. One day he just wasn't there anymore. He'd always been distant, but after he left, it was like a part of me was missing. I never confronted him. I never told him how it felt to grow up without him. I never told him how much I resented him for abandoning me. Years later I ran into him. He was remarried, a stranger to me. I stood there, seeing a man I didn't know, and all I could think was, how could you leave me? But I didn't say anything. I didn't even acknowledge him. I just turned and walked away. I could have confronted him. I could have asked him why. But instead I held on to the anger, and that anger became a part of who I was. It sat there, a scar that I never allowed to heal. Then there was Ben. I thought I had it all figured out. My life, my career, my goal. But seeing him succeed in his business, while I felt like I was constantly falling short, made something snap inside me. I hadn't seen it then, but now I know I resented him. I resented him for what I thought was an easy success, for the freedom he seemed to have. We used to talk about everything. We used to laugh, make plans for the future. But somewhere along the way, I let my jealousy turn into bitterness. I stopped returning his calls, stopped reaching out, and I never apologized. Then there was my marriage. Sarah had tried to reach me, to get me to understand that I wasn't the only one hurting, but I was too busy to listen, too busy to care. I buried myself in my work, too afraid to confront the quiet truth. I was emotionally absent. I tried to convince myself it was for the best. I was providing for my family after all. But deep down, I knew I was neglecting the most important part of being a man. Love, real love, not just giving material things, but being present, showing empathy, listening. I was letting everything I cared about slip away, and yet I couldn't stop. It was late, just like any other night. I had been at my desk, working. My computer screen flickered as I reviewed yet another report. My eyes tired, but my mind pushing through the fatigue. The weight of the day hung heavy on me, but I couldn't allow myself to. There was too much at stake. I had been feeling off for days, tightness in my chest, dizziness, a strange sense of urgency, but I brushed it off. I told myself I was just overworked. It was nothing. It always was. But that night, the world around me seemed to grow quieter. The hum of the office air conditioning faded into a distant buzz, the lights above flickering for a split second. I shook it off and tried to focus, but the pressure in my chest grew unbearable. It wasn't like anything I had ever felt before. It was sharp. It was a warning. I stood up, feeling dizzy, my vision swimming. My breath came in shallow gasps. As I stumbled toward the door, my hand gripped the frame of the doorway, and then everything stopped. My chest seized with an intensity I couldn't understand. A wave of heat rushed through my body, followed by a bone-chilling cold. My vision blurred, then blacked out. I collapsed to the floor. I didn't even feel it when my head hit the cold tile. The next thing I knew, I was aware, but not fully. I couldn't see anything at first, just darkness. But I felt it. I could feel everything. The weight of my body, the overwhelming sensation of pressure around me, the suffocating silence. I heard voices in the distance, but they sounded muffled, like they were coming from another world. My mind struggled to focus, but it was hard to hold on to anything. I felt myself slipping. Then came the pain, the cold pain of death itself. It was like I was being pulled away from everything I knew. The warmth of life, the familiarity of my office, the weight of my body. It all began to fade into nothing. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was like I was floating, suspended in the void. There was nothing here. No sounds, no feelings, just an unbearable emptiness. The only thing I could focus on was the panic rising inside me. This is it. I'm dying. I'm dying alone. There's no way back. Fear gripped me. I had always been in control, always. But here, in this moment, I was powerless. I felt no peace. I felt no assurance. There was only coldness. The realization hit me hard. I had never truly felt at peace with myself. I had never really lived. I had never truly reconciled with the past, with the people I had hurt. Then something shifted. The stillness around me began to stir. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. The silence cracked, like something heavy had broken through it. And then there was light. At first it was a flicker, almost too subtle to catch. But then it grew. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen before. It wasn't blinding or harsh. It was soft and warm, but it filled every corner of the darkness. I tried to move toward it, but I couldn't. It wasn't like I had legs anymore. I couldn't feel my body, but I was aware of its absence. I was weightless, like I was drifting towards something I couldn't see yet, something that called to me. As I moved forward, the light seemed to grow, and with it a sense of peace. I felt it wash over me like a wave, like the kind of peace you've been searching for your whole life, the peace that makes everything else irrelevant. The world I had known, the pain I had carried, it all seemed so far away. I could hear whispers now, soft, gentle voices. At first, they were distant, but then they grew closer. It wasn't clear who or what was speaking, but I felt no fear, only warmth, only welcome. Then I saw him, a figure, standing in the light. I couldn't make out his features at first. It was as though he was both clear and obscured at the same time. But his presence, it was unmistakable. It was the kind of presence that filled every void, that calmed every fear. His gaze was steady, yet filled with compassion. I knew instinctively who he was. I had never met him, but somehow I knew. Jesus. He stepped forward, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, like I had been waiting for him my entire life. You are not alone, he said, his voice gentle but firm. It echoed in my soul more than in my ears. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. You are here because you were lost, he continued, but you are not lost anymore. I could feel tears, tears that didn't exist in my earthly body, but felt real nonetheless. I wanted to fall to my knees, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, surrounded by the soft glow of his presence. You have spent your life chasing things that don't matter, he said. You have avoided the things that do. The weight of his words hit me hard. I felt every mistake, every moment I had neglected the people who mattered most. Every moment I had spent chasing things that could never bring me peace. The peace I was feeling now was not the peace I had known on earth. This peace was different. It was complete, unshakable. It didn't depend on anything I had done or anything I had achieved. It was a gift. You can choose to carry this peace with you, Jesus said, but you must first let go of the things that keep you from it. I felt the burden of my life, the resentment, the guilt, the anger begin to lift. It was like I was being untangled from something that had kept me bound for years. But just as quickly as the peace came, a sudden realization struck me. I wasn't supposed to be here yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't finished. I needed more time. I needed to make things right. I was about to speak, but the light began to flicker, and suddenly I felt myself being pulled away, back toward the cold reality of the hospital room. Not yet, I whispered, the words coming from deep within me. But the light was fading, and with it I was pulled back to earth. I woke up with a start. The sterile smell of the hospital room hit me before I could focus on anything else. My head felt heavy, like it had been pulled from the deepest, most peaceful sleep. The beeping of machines was sharp, too sharp. The sound echoed in my ears, a stark reminder of where I was. But the peace, that peace, was still there. I tried to move, but I felt weak, drained. My body was still foreign to me. It didn't feel like mine. The last thing I remembered was the dark void, the overwhelming light, and then, him, Jesus. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming, but then I saw Sarah. She was sitting beside me, her hand on mine, her eyes swollen from crying. She had been here the whole time. She had waited for me. I couldn't speak at first. Words felt inadequate. I wanted to say so much, but I couldn't. The weight of everything I had been through, the years of running, the years of neglect, crashed down on me. I'm sorry, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Sarah looked at me, her face full of relief and confusion. She was trying to understand what had happened, what had changed in me. It's okay, you're here. But I wasn't sure I was really here. Not completely. I still felt the presence, the peace that had filled me in that place beyond death. I knew what I had to do now. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't just slip back into my old life and pretend nothing had changed. Jesus had told me, "You are not lost anymore." But I still was. I was lost in my own heart, my own fears. But now, I knew I didn't have to stay lost. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I could still see the light. I could still feel his presence, as if it were right beside me, waiting for me to make the choice. The choice to be free, the choice to stop running, the choice to finally embrace the peace I had never allowed myself to have. I realized I had been chasing everything the world said would fill me: status, wealth, success, but none of it mattered. None of it could give me what I needed. I needed to forgive, not just others, but myself. That was the first step, and it wasn't going to be easy. The road ahead would be hard, and the guilt I had carried for years wasn't going to disappear overnight. But now I had the strength to face it, the strength to confront the past I had hidden away for so long. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my decision settle over me like a blanket. This was the beginning of something new, something real, and for the first time in my life, I felt at peace. The first thing I had to do was forgive my father. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He left when I was a kid, and I hated him for it. I resented him for walking out on my mother and me. I had buried that hatred so deep, I'd forgotten it was even there, but it had shaped who I was. The anger I carried, the abandonment I felt, it controlled my every decision. But now, I knew I couldn't carry it anymore. I couldn't hold on to that grudge if I wanted to live in peace. Jesus had shown me something deeper, something that went beyond just the external things I had been chasing. He showed me that forgiveness wasn't about what the other person did to me. It was about freeing myself. I wanted peace. I needed it, but I couldn't hold on to this anger any longer. The next day I called my father. The phone rang, and each passing second felt like a lifetime. When he finally picked up, my heart pounded in my chest. He sounded older, his voice cracked. "Dad," I said, the word feeling strange on my lips. There was silence on the other end. I wasn't sure if he was shocked or afraid, but I knew one thing. I had to say this. I had to speak these words aloud. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "I forgive you for everything, for leaving us, for not being there. I've held on to that for so long, and I'm done with it." The line went quiet for what seemed like forever, and then he said something I never thought I would hear. "I'm sorry, Michael. I've been sorry for a long time." We talked for a few more minutes, sharing a few words we both needed. But that moment, the moment I said, "I forgive you," was one of the most powerful moments of my life. I didn't realize how much weight I had been carrying until it was gone. I hung up the phone, and for the first time I felt free. That wasn't the only call I had to make. There was Ben, my old friend, the one I had cut off out of jealousy and pride. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I never told him why I pulled away. He had been there for me, always, but I pushed him away. I called him next. The conversation was uncomfortable at first, but he listened, and when I told him how sorry I was, how much I had wronged him, he forgave me immediately. "I've missed you, man," he said. "We can fix this. We can start over." And so we did. But the hardest conversation was the one with Sarah. I had ignored her for too long. I had neglected her love, her care, the sacrifices she had made for our family. I had let my ambition steal her from me, and I had let the resentment I carried toward myself tear us apart. When I spoke to her that night, I did so with the rawness of my heart exposed. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I said, my voice cracking. "I've been a terrible husband. I've been selfish. I've been blind, and I've neglected you. I want to change. I need to change, but I need you with me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She held me in her arms. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "We're in this together." It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew now, deep in my soul, that peace was the only way forward. And I wasn't going to let it go. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened, trying to understand what I had just experienced. It was hard to put into words. I had been to the edge of death, and yet in that place of darkness, I found something I had never known: peace. But it wasn't just the peace of being away from pain. It was something deeper, something that went beyond life and death. It was the peace that comes when you stop running from yourself, when you stop pretending that everything is fine, when you stop holding on to grudges and guilt like weights around your neck. For the first time, I realized how much I had been carrying. The years of resentment toward my father, the guilt over abandoning my own family for work, the bitterness toward Ben for succeeding in ways I could never seem to. All of it had built up, layer by layer, until I was suffocating under it. But now, it was gone. Gone because I chose to let it go. I had seen the truth in those few moments beyond death. It wasn't about success or failure. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about relationships, about love, about peace. When I woke up in that hospital room, I felt different. Physically, I could barely move, but spiritually I felt strong. I knew I wasn't the same person who had entered that room days before. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that office, obsessed with work, with numbers, with a career that didn't love me back. I had been given a chance, a second chance to make things right. I had to start by confronting my own guilt. I had neglected my family for so long, thinking I was doing it all for them, but I wasn't. I was doing it for me, for my ego, for my sense of control, and it had cost me everything that mattered most. When Sarah walked into the room the day I woke up, I could see the worry in her eyes. She had been there for me through it all, waiting for me to wake up, praying for me, and yet I had barely noticed her. I had barely noticed anything outside of my work and my personal ambitions, and that realization hit me like a ton of bricks. "I'm sorry," I said again, my voice hoarse. I'd been so blind, so selfish. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, the silence between us, heavy with the weight of everything that had passed. But then, after a long moment, she smiled, through her tears. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're here now. We'll figure this out." I knew it wouldn't be easy. Nothing good ever is. But we had time to rebuild, time to reconnect, time to make peace with the things we had neglected. I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know if I would live another 20 years or another 20, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't waste another second without truly living, without truly loving, without truly being present. The man I had been, the man obsessed with perfection, control and ambition, was gone, and the man who woke up in that hospital bed was someone new, a man who had seen beyond this world, who had felt peace that transcended everything he thought he knew, and now, it was my turn to live out that peace. As I lay there, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized how much I had taken for granted, how much I had neglected the people who mattered most. But now, it was different. Now, I had the power to choose. I had the power to love, to forgive, to be present. And for the first time in my life, I knew what peace really meant. The days that followed my awakening were slow, filled with small but profound shifts. I was physically weak, but every movement felt purposeful. My body was healing, but my soul was already in the process of transformation. I knew I couldn't simply go back to the way things were. Not after everything I had seen and experienced. The peace I had found was not something I could just return to life and forget. It was something I had to live out, step by step. The first call I made was to my father. I had been avoiding him for years, carrying around the weight of his abandonment like a shadow that followed me everywhere. The resentment had shaped so much of who I was, and I had never given it the chance to heal. I had never given him the chance to explain himself, to apologize, or to make amends. I dialed the number, my heart racing with both fear and determination. The phone rang once, twice, and then he picked up. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "It's Mike." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear his breath catch, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But instead he said, "Michael, I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "I know," I replied. "I've been carrying a lot of anger, but I can't carry it anymore. I've been given a chance to make things right, and I want to start by saying, I forgive you." The line went quiet for a moment. I held my breath, wondering if I had said the right thing. Then his voice cracked. "I've always been sorry, son," he said. "I never meant to leave you like that. I just didn't know how to fix things." We talked for a while after that, sharing words that had been long overdue. It wasn't a perfect conversation. It wasn't some grand reconciliation. But for the first time in years, I felt a weight lift from my chest. I had finally let go of the anger I had held onto for so long. I had taken the first step toward healing. Next, I called Ben. The bitterness that had kept me from him was a poison I couldn't afford to carry any longer. I dialed his number, unsure of what to expect, but hoping for the best. When he picked up, it was like no time had passed at all. "Ben, it's Michael," I said, my voice more confident now. "I owe you an apology." There was a brief pause before he responded. "I've been waiting for that for a long time," he said, his voice warm but tinged with the hurt of years gone by. "I've been foolish," I continued. "I let my pride get in the way of our friendship. I was jealous, and I pushed you away. I've realized how wrong I was, and I want to make things right." He didn't say much at first, but when he did, his words hit me in a way I didn't expect. "You've always been my brother, Michael. I've missed you. Let's fix this." Just like that, the door to our friendship creaked open again. It wouldn't be the same immediately, but it didn't matter. We had both been given a chance to start over. We agreed to meet in person, to talk through the years of silence. I felt a sense of relief that I hadn't known I needed until now. Finally, there was Sarah. My heart ached as I thought of all the years I had spent neglecting her. We had been living in the same house, but we had been strangers to each other for too long. The space between us felt insurmountable at times, but I knew it was time to face the truth. One evening, after I had spent the day on the phone with my father and Ben, I sat down with Sarah. She had been patient, waiting for me to come back to her in ways I hadn't yet known how to. "I need you to know, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "I've been selfish, I've been focused on everything else, but you and Emma were always the most important things in my life. I've neglected you in every way, and I'm so sorry." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't speak right away. Instead, she just reached out and took my hand. "I've waited for you to see that. I've waited for you to come back to me. We'll figure it out, Michael. I believe we can," and I believed it too. I had spent so long building walls around myself, so afraid of letting anyone in. But now, I knew the truth. Peace, real peace, came from vulnerability. It came from showing up, not as a perfect version of yourself, but as the broken, redeemed person you truly are. In the days that followed, I took real steps toward healing. I started spending more time with Sarah and Emma, listening to them in ways I hadn't before. I began rebuilding the trust with my father and Ben. It was hard, it was messy, but it was real. I realized that true peace doesn't come from avoiding the hard conversations. It doesn't come from running away from the things that scare you the most. It comes from facing them head on. It comes from embracing the discomfort of reconciliation, knowing that on the other side, you will find freedom. And that's exactly what I found. Peace. It has been months now since I woke up in that hospital room, months since I came face to face with the kind of peace I had spent my whole life running from. I have learned a lot in that time. I've learned that life is fragile, that we are not promised tomorrow, and that the time to make things right is always right now. But most of all, I've learned that peace, real peace, does not come from success, wealth, or recognition. It does not come from the perfect job, the perfect house, or the perfect image. Peace comes from surrender. It comes from reconciliation. It comes from opening your heart to God and to the people you have hurt. The peace I found wasn't a fleeting feeling. It wasn't a momentary escape from the chaos of life. It was something deeper. It was a peace that transcended circumstances, a peace that filled the spaces in my heart I had left empty for too long. I remember that moment in the hospital bed, when I knew that I wasn't just healed physically, I was being given a second chance, a chance to fix what I had broken, a chance to rebuild relationships, to forgive, to be vulnerable, a chance to let go of the anger, the guilt, the resentment I had carried for years. In the past, I had always believed that I could do it all on my own, that I could work hard enough, fight enough, to earn everything I want. But when I came face to face with the reality of my own mortality, I realized how empty that thinking was. None of it mattered. What mattered were the people I loved, the relationships I had neglected, the moments I had missed. But here's the most important part. The peace I found didn't come just because I said I forgive you to my father or made things right with Ben. It didn't come just because I apologized to Sarah and started spending more time with Emma. It came when I learned to forgive myself. For years, I had carried the weight of mistakes I couldn't undo. I had punished myself for the choices I made, for the time I had wasted, for the people I had hurt, but I never allowed myself to move forward. I couldn't. I held on to that guilt, like a prisoner holds on to chains. But in that moment when Jesus spoke to me in the light, I realized something profound. God's grace was always there. It had been there all along, waiting for me to accept it. It was the key to unlocking the peace I had been searching for. If you are listening to this today, and you feel like you are carrying a burden, whether it is anger, guilt, resentment, or pain, know that you don't have to carry it alone. You don't have to live your life weighed down by what has been. There is always a way forward. Jesus didn't just offer me peace in the afterlife. He offered me peace now. He offered me a life where I could make things right, where I could live with purpose and love. And he offers that same peace to all of us. I challenge you, if there is someone you need to forgive, if there is something you need to let go of, do it now, because peace is waiting for you, just as it was waiting for me, and it is a peace that will change everything. As I look back on everything that happened, I realize how little time we have, the time we waste holding on to grudges, the time we spend thinking that success or status will give us fulfillment. it's all fleeting. What really matters is love. What really matters is the relationships we build, the peace we find with others, and the peace we find with ourselves. The Bible says in Isaiah 26:3, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Trust, surrender, let go, and let peace fill your soul. If you died tonight, would you have peace? Think about that, and ask yourself, what is keeping me from peace right now? You know, after everything I went through, I realized that peace isn't something you find at the end of a perfect life. It's something you find in the middle of your mess, when you finally let go of all the anger, guilt, and pride you've been holding on to. I'm not saying it's easy, it wasn't for me, but the real question is, if you're honest with yourself, can you say you have peace, or are there things left unsaid, unresolved, that you're still carrying? Think about it, and let me know what you think in the comments. Have you made peace with everything that's been holding you back? Or is there something you still need to face?